Good afternoon, everyone, and happy Tuesday. Welcome to Stock Market Today. You have Alyssa Corum and Ed Carson here. We're going to break down the action that it was a little bit of a quiet day, except for small caps really standing out today. But underneath the surface, Ed, the sector rotation continues, and we've got some interesting names to talk about.
Yeah, I want to take a look at a few stocks. 360 Digitech, the return of China stocks, Ovintiv, which is a oil and gas name, and AMN Healthcare.
All right, we will do that. But first, a look at the major indexes, kicking things off with a look at the S&P 500. So we have the SPY ETF here. So the S&P closing down fractionally today after a gap up in the morning, but quickly filled the gap. We did, Ed. The NASDAQ also closing down about 0.1%. The Dow up 0.1%, and the Russell 2000, really the shining star here again today, up about 1.2%. So talk to us about the action that we saw here for the S&P 500.
Yeah, I mean, it's a little disappointing. We were getting really close to all-time highs. This is the third time in 4 days that we've sort of, that we sort of close at the lows. So it's not the greatest thing, but we're not talking about huge swings, right, either. I don't want to make too much of it. We rise 1% and we'll forget all about today. So it would have been nice to hit all-time highs, but we're close. The NASDAQ's not, still above the 50-day line, didn't ever really threaten that. There were some healthcare names that got hit pretty hard today. So I think that dragged the S&P. Some of the giant techs weren't doing much, which is something that's been happening for the last few days. But, it's still, the general trend, we're still under pressure. It hasn't really, today didn't really change anything, at least certainly on the major indexes. And then there was rotation underneath, but we're still under pressure. The S&P's below all-time highs, the NASDAQ above its 50-day line.
That's right. Yeah. So the S&P is still hanging around this 4,200 level. We'll have to see if that can now be a floor instead of a ceiling. And touching really quickly on small caps, looking at IWN here. So up 1.2%. We were drawing kind of a trend line around here. So above that level, now well above the 50-day line, which had been quite the resistance level for the Russell in recent months.
Yeah, and I think that today you're seeing the strength in oil and gas names, and you're seeing probably financials certainly aren't hurting this small cap index, a lot of those components in here.
Okay, well, let's take a little bit of a closer look at some of the interesting movers today, kicking things off with QFIN at 360 Digitech. A huge gain today, up over 20%, massive volume, coming on the heels of a quarterly earnings report a couple sessions ago. Had a bit of a handle here, Ed, but just a stunning move for the stock, but it's still not at its highs from earlier in the year.
Yeah, it was a pretty crazy move. A delayed reaction to earnings because that actually sold off the day before. Tremendous earnings growth, but the sales growth is slowing. So there is that sort of dichotomy for this stock. It didn't quite have a handle. It is, I guess you could say that it sort of closed around a 28.61 double bottom buy point. It didn't show up on markets on the pattern rec, but it was above the midpoint of the base. So that should have been proper, but at this point, it's well beyond extended. Regardless of whether or not there was an entry, it's extended now. Now you sort of have to wait to see if it pulls back, forms a handle, sort of uses that as an alternate entry, because a lot of power, a lot of growth, it's wild. The RS line is coming back toward record highs all of a sudden. So that's a positive. It had a really big uptrend before. And there's a lot of strength in China stocks. Those have really been sitting out for the past few months. And it'd be nice to see that coming back, because that has been sort of a dead sector for quite a while.
That it has. Yeah, you really don't want to be chasing it here. And Ed, you call this a pseudo handle because there wasn't enough days here for it to be a proper handle, correct? So now if we can see some nice tight action for here, maybe that could be a proper buying opportunity with that strong relative strength line. But the volatility here, I think is definitely still a question mark.
You're not, this is not a nice, slow and steady stock. I mean, you have to be, it's going to be wild. And, it wouldn't be surprising to see this fall 10, 12% tomorrow. This is one reason why we don't want to chase it. It's had such a nice run, almost straight from the bottom, aside from that 3-day pause. Yeah, it's very volatile, and it always has been.
All right. And let's talk about a stock that we covered on IBD Live this morning in detail, and that is ticker OVV, Ovintiv, in the oil and gas group. Ed, you said this is a group that was really on fire today, and OVV taking part in that, up over 9% in above average turnover. So this has a lot of really great technical aspects to it.
Yeah, I'm not sure why. It used to be called Encana, and so I'm not sure what exactly spurred the name change. It used to be based in Canada, and now it's based in Denver. Really nice action today. RS line sort of breaking above the handle high, at least, not at a record high. So that was that. It is out of a buy range. I mean, so that's, you'd have to wait for it to pull back or set up again. That's the problem with a lot of these oil stocks. They had such powerful moves. If you didn't grab them right away, they were gone, and some of them are already extended. So that's just sometimes if you don't catch them, this is why you need to have, your watch lists in hands and paying attention, alerts drawn, because sometimes they move that fast.
They definitely do. We've been covering this sector more and more, and for good reason. And what about the healthcare sector continuing to see increased attention in names in this group? And AMN Healthcare Services, ticker AMN, with a 5% gain today. We had heavy volume, and look at that really nice pullback after it blast higher on earnings, Ed.
Yeah, I'll be honest, I did not look at this in the last 10 minutes before it closed, and it definitely picked up. Yeah, it's a nice sort of like broken trend line that you can see. Yeah, really, wow, what really came on in that last 20, 30 minutes, a lot of volume into the close. Sort of a trend line break in this stock, so you could sort of use as an early entry, because this is actually on a weekly chart is a 4 weeks tight. It's just been setting up really tight action in there. After, as you say, it's sort of technically, all these bases, it's a stage 1 base. That's because it sort of had this base and then another base, and another base, but I wouldn't call it a stage 1 base at this point. It's just been forming to steadily along, moving along. What this does is they provide staffing of like doctors and nurses, other healthcare professionals to, healthcare facilities around the US. Some of it's permanent, some of it's temporary. But as you can see, their growth has really picked up. And it was just a nice action here.
Definitely. And this stock, unlike a lot of the stocks that we've seen with the most impressive moves this year, the fundamentals haven't really been there, but that's not true with AMN. You have triple-digit earnings growth in the last quarter and a huge pickup in revenue.
Yeah, that's right. And I want to say, I want to do a shout out. This is somebody that somebody pointed this out on IBD Live. And so I was looking at it, and that's why we're talking about it now. I mean, obviously it kept on moving, but a lot of great information here. But yeah, there's the fundamentals, the technicals are here. Sometimes it's not the most exciting name.
Yeah.
It doesn't have the biggest volume. So that may be one reason I may not get into certain things. But for you and I, if you're buying just a few shares, this is liquid enough for that.
Yeah, say IBD Live, stock ideas from the team, stock ideas from the participants, special guests, which we're this month going to have roughly 2 special guests every week, which is really exciting, including David Ryan, as we announced, as a new weekly special guest. So make sure you check that out, investors.com/IBD Live, to see what our daily morning live stream is all about. Thanks so much, Ed. And thank you all for watching. Make sure, if you're a Leaderboard subscriber or trialist, to go on over to leaderboard.investors.com for Leaderboard scorecard. At that top banner of the page, you will see the link to join that monthly webinar recapping the month's action and look ahead. Thanks so much for watching, everyone. We'll see you tomorrow.